this opportunity to thank everybody who contributed in one way or the other to the service this morning. And I've always said this, that it does not happen in the back. It's worshiping God, King of the universe. And we want to do our best possible as enabled by God. I thank each one of you once again for being here. Thank you for the music, Brian and the Wheaton family, for coordinating the music aspect of it. A few weeks ago, maybe about a month or so, I was looking for a speaker to come for a high Sabbath. I remember Eugene Rhino, mentioning someone that he'd known for a long time, a few years ago. And we kind of talked about it long ago and kind of didn't pursue along the line. But this time again, I said, I remember Eugene mentioning somebody. Let's try to talk with him again. Anyways, I asked him to see if he can contact his friend, and he did, and gave me the answer that his schedule is open for that Sabbath, and he can come. And then he gave me his number, and I called him. Lonnie is a wonderful guy. I don't know much about him, but the very first time I was on the phone with him, he just makes you comfortable on the phone. And I still remember, I called him so that we can kind of talk what he's going to share, where we're at as a church and stuff like that. And then I just started with, I don't know if Lonnie remembers this or not, but I remember mentioning, he said, our church and our district theme is to know him and to make him known. I don't know if you remember, he probably remembers it. And he says on the phone, do you know what is the theme of the Rocky Mountain Conference? I said, I don't know. He said, if I'm saying it right, I said, to know him and to make him fully known. I said, you're kidding? He said, no. I said, well, okay, we're doing something right. So I said immediately, I don't think we need to talk anymore. If that's the conference's theme and that's our district's theme, you know exactly where we're at. We'll let you lead by God. We didn't actually talk anything about that. He just had some ideas that he wanted to put together, and here he is. I'd like him to tell us a little bit more about him, because I think it'll only be fair, because I don't personally know him a lot. I do know that his wife, and he's got 3 children, and 2 girls and a boy, and all the names, they start with L, including his wife's name. So I know that much. Lonnie and Laura, and the other 3 L's are just a little, they kind of have to tweak those names to get it right. So I'll let him tell you the history. And 2 of them, the girls are in Loma Linda. I'll let him tell us what they're doing there. And the boy is somewhere in Florida, and I'll let you tell you guys what he's doing. But I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank the Rocky Mountain Conference. Please take a thank you, gratitude. Because when I asked him, what does it take for us to get you here? He said, nothing. I said, do you need an accommodation? No. He said, can we help with your travel? I said, no. He said, this will be a Rocky Mountain Conference's gift to your church and your district. He said. I thought that's how churches work, right? They're not even part of our conference, but surely he has put us in his heart. And he said, this will be our gift. And he actually worked it into his, maybe departmental budget or whatever it is, and he put this into it. And he is here as a gift from Rocky Mountain Conference. So I am very grateful, and I'm sure the church is grateful for his and the conference's positive gesture. Please take our thanks and gratitude back to him. And so thank you for being here. Let us now focus our minds on God. And as Ivan leads us into the scripture reading, later on, Lonnie's message as well.
I invite you to open your Bibles to Revelation 22. It's chapter 22 and verse 17. 22 and verse 17 of Revelation. Reading now the New King James, and it says, and the Spirit and the bride say, And let him who hears say, Come. And let him who thirsts come. And whoever desires, let him take the water of life freely.
The clock is running out of battery, so the time is not correct, so you can take whatever time you need.
Well,
Don't worry about it.
Pastor, the Rocky Mountain Conference, it's 11 o'clock. So I'm just going to pretend I'm home and go from there. Well, thank you for those nice words. And the truth of the matter is, we don't charge because I'm a little bit afraid you'll ask for your money back. If you don't charge, you're good to go. No, it is good, so good to be with you here. I just love driving through this morning. We left North Platte nice and dark and had beautiful sunshine, beautiful sunrise, and saw the beautiful hill country as we drove through here. It's good to be with you. Good to be with you. God's people. There is something about being a member of God's family around the world that you can meet somebody you know, and somebody, even if you don't know, you've got something in common. You see, we're brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. And that's awesome. It is my privilege to work in the Rocky Mountain Conference. My wife and I have been there a number of years. She is an OB nurse. So if any of you are pregnant, going to labor the next hour, just step around the corner and she'll take care of you. She has been an OB nurse for a number of years. We are blessed to have 3 children, as Pastor said. 2 of our daughters, they all want to come back to Denver, but it's good for them to be out and about. And our oldest daughter was a teacher for a number of years, and the kids would come in our Adventist schools. They'd come with problems and issues and families, and she said, Dad, I need to learn how to do some counseling, some biblical counseling. So she went back, got a master's in family and marriage counseling, and does that. My other daughter works in the emergency room at Loma Linda University Hospital. That's an exciting place to be, 24 hours a day. I blame myself a little bit for that because when the kids were growing up, I spent 5 years carrying a badge in California. I was a law enforcement police officer. And somehow the lights and the sirens evidently made an impact on her, because she does enjoy helping people. She also has a master's degree and has worked hard in that. Our son is in administration at Florida Hospital down in Orlando, Florida. See, it's a long ways to an ocean from Colorado. But wherever we go to visit our kids, there's an ocean close by. My son also has a CPA and an MBA, and doing very, very well. But you know what? I'm the most, can I say proud? I'm the most satisfied, whatever word you want to put, is because I know the Sabbath morning, this morning, my 3 children are not in the bar, they're not out partying, they're in the local Seventh-day Adventist church. Whatever else might go wrong in life, my kids following Christ, it's okay. I can get through it all. So, as I told those of you that were in Sabbath school, told you I'm not a trained preacher, and I'm much more comfortable as a teacher, much more comfortable with you as students. So, as a teacher, you get some tough stuff over with first. The first one is I'm going to give you a report card. Well, actually, it's not you, but I'm going to give it to you. This is a report on Adventist education. I got to do a little bit of PR. Is that okay? Just a little bit. It's only 11 o'clock anyway, remember? So this is a report card on Adventist education. By the way, Campion Academy is now your school. You know that. We have a lot of kids from Kansas, Nebraska Conference and beyond. But I brought a number of these. They're out in the fellowship hall, and so I'd like for you to take a look if you get a chance, and you can just take a look at that, and we'll go from there. As a teacher, I don't feel comfortable at all unless I give you a quiz. And I also find, I get my feelings hurt when people sleep, and I find when you are writing, you're less prone to sleeping. So, my good buddy Gene is going to give you, and his helper, is going to give you a blue sheet of paper. What I would like you to do is turn it to the one that says water. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, Lonnie, we came to hear about Jesus Christ, to hear about heaven. What in the world does water have to do with heaven? Well, stay with me. I think we're going to try to do some things. We're going to do some learning, and we're also going to do some preaching as well, semi-preaching as well. So, I was a little bit concerned, but the more I've got to know this group, Pastor, this is a bright, bright group. Good bunch of people. By the way, I do want to say, while they're passing those blue quiz sheets out to you, there is power in small group. Power in small group. My friends, my heart goes out, and my passion and my love and my interest, because we have, Rocky Mountain Conference, we have 121 churches, but so many of those have 4, 5, 6 members. Very, very tiny churches. Well, they are our light on the hill in that community. And so even if you're from a small town with not very many members in your church, and if you have 5 different churches, pastor, 4 different churches, those people are God's avenue to the community. And I want to encourage you guys, you remember the story of the guy with the starfish. You know, they wash up. Every once in a while, they pick it up and throw it out. 2 guys walking side by side. They said, well, one said to the other, there's so many starfish here. You can't solve all the problems of the starfish. Why are you even bothering? He picked up the one starfish. He looked at it closely. He said, well, I can help save the life of this starfish right here. And he threw it into the ocean. And guys, the mess that we find our world in today, we can't solve that. I don't know how many of you watched the debates, Republican debate last Wednesday night. The things we are struggling in this sin-sick world are horrendous. Well, folks, God doesn't necessarily ask us to solve the world's problems here in Broken Bow, but He does ask us to save brothers, to help spread His love to the people that we come in contact. That's our challenge, and I love the fact that you guys are doing small group. Well, because this is a class, the one, you've got your pen and your paper out there, and we're ready. You know, water, I got to thinking about that when I was thinking of something to talk about. I wanted to do something that everybody's familiar with. Think back since you got up this morning. Maybe for some of us, that was at 6 o'clock this morning. Maybe for some of you who lived around the corner, you didn't get up till 8:30 or 9. Is there anybody in here that has not used water this morning? My guess that's not. And my guess, if you really think about it, you have probably already used water at least 6, 7, 8. Can you think of all the times that you've used water and not even thought about it? Water is a gift. It's a gift. Let's take a little closer look at it. Those of you who are scientists, you know that a water molecule contains 1 oxygen atom and 2 hydrogen atoms. And they are held together by, what's the name of the bond? Very good, covalent. All right. Did you know water covers 71% of the Earth's surface? And only 2.5% of the Earth's water is fresh water. Most of it, of course, is in our oceans. I can't imagine, I think one of the worst ways to die would be from dehydration on a raft in the ocean. All that water, so thirsty, your mouth is just hurting, and you can't drink it. That'd be so tough. Water, inside and outside. We are told that Some people, observers, have said that by 2025, more than half the world's population will be facing water shortage problems. Anybody have relatives in California? Boy, not a pleasant place right now. Well, here's our quiz time, okay? Now, in Sabbathsville, I've got to tell you, the A side was a little more over here. So, guys, I want to look at you guys to be a little more answering, okay? Because we got to balance this out a little bit, like the pastor said. Let's start with an easy question. Number one, the amount of water vapor in the air is called humidity. Do you live in a high humidity or a low humidity?
Depends on the day.
It depends on the day, doesn't it? When I do this ask this question in Colorado, it's much more arid. When I ask this question at my son's church down in Orlando, it's humid down there. In fact, it's kind of interesting. I'll get in trouble. I probably shouldn't tell you this because I've got about 6 hours ride with my wife on the way home. But she has beautiful hair, doesn't she? It looks nice. It hangs nice. It's all good. You know, when we go to our son's house in Orlando, she takes scrunchies and rubber bands. Do you know why? Because her hair goes from this to this. And that comb that you showed us, the pick, that kind of would work for her hair. It just goes crazy. Humidity, humidity. You what? I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. But I am her way home, so she can't be too, it's a long ways to walk, so maybe I'll be okay. All right, a little harder question. The device that measures humidity, question number 2. What is it called that measures humidity?
Thermostat.
A humidistat or hygrometer is really the one I was looking for. Yeah, exactly. Hygrometer measures that humidity, you bet. Number 3, whenever a water molecule leaves a surface and diffuses into the surrounding gas, it is said to have what? Evaporated. Now, does evaporating have a cooling or a heating effect? That's why during the summertime, some of you, especially when humidity's high, you do this. And why do you do that? Because what you're asking is, if there's any moisture on my face, please evaporate, leaving my face a little cooler. That's why we have swamp coolers. Okay? You guys are doing awesome. Number 4, another tough question. Another form, we have this in Colorado, I don't know if you do here, but it's a form of evaporation by which a molecule becomes gaseous directly, leaving the surface of ice without first becoming a liquid. In other words, during the snow, when you get snow and then it doesn't melt, but it just dissipates. Does that happen here sometimes? What do you call that?
Sublimation.
Sublimation. Sublimation, very good. Sublimation, the water sublimates into the surrounding atmosphere. All right, here's one for the kids. Water is found in 3 states. Letter A, at a standard temperature and pressure, what state is water? It's a liquid. It's a liquid. When it's below 32 degrees, what state is it? It's a solid. It's ice. And for the rest of you, in its gaseous state, it's known as steam or vapor. Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys are so good. Number 6, water vapor is less dense or more dense than dry air? Less dense because of the clouds. Number 7 is kind of fun. Take a look at this. A cloud has the ability to create and store static electricity. I know Nebraska. I know you have some of these events here. When a stored potential electric energy is suddenly and violently released into an opposite charged item, such as a tree, a building, or a human being, we call that lightning. We used to live, Laura and I spent 3 years down in Texas at Southwestern Adventist University. We lived up on a hill, and we also lived in Oklahoma. You know what they call Oklahoma? They call where we live, it's called Tornado Alley. But in Texas and Oklahoma, we would sit out there and we would see God's 4th of July, lightning and thunder, and just, it was awesome to see that stuff. as long as we were safe. You have some of those storms here, don't you, every once in a while? Well, have you ever thought of how powerful they are? Well, according to Texas A&M, I looked this up on how I have a friend called Siri. Any of you have a friend called Siri? You gotta be careful what Siri says. It's not always true, but I looked this up at Texas A&M, and hopefully it's more true. How many lightning bolts occurred? How powerful are they? Well, according to the university study, the folks there, they said that at any one time around the globe, that's in Africa, Australia, South America, all around the globe, you know, as you look at the weather map of the United States, there can be thunderstorms up in Washington and down in Oregon and over in Utah and up in South Dakota. There can be lots of thunderstorms going on. But they say around the globe, there are about 1,200 thunderstorms at any one time. And in those 1,200 thunderstorms, there's an average of nearly 100 flashes of lightning around the globe per second. God does not have a power problem. That is awesome. And let me tell you, while we're on it, a typical lightning bolt, remember, that there's 100 of them on average per second around the globe. A typical lightning bolt contains about 15 million volts. Jane, if you could harness those and sell it back to the power company, all of us could retire on your paycheck. For just one. And that one lightning bolt instantly heats the surrounding air to 60,000 degrees Fahrenheit. 60,000. Years ago, we used to have a lot more deaths by lightning. It tapped out at about 90 deaths across the United States. Because of less agriculture and better understanding, we're now down closer to 28 to 35 per year. The number one state for lightning deaths, as you might imagine, is Florida. Number two, I was a little surprised at. I would have thought it would be somewhere in the south again. But it actually is Arizona. Maybe both of those states. Everybody's on the golf course. I don't know. Well, number 9, 2 more. How much does 1 gallon of water weigh at 60 degrees Fahrenheit?
About 8 pounds.
You are exactly right, but I'm going to give you a more exact right. It is 8.3378 pounds. That's what you were going to say, and you're sitting on this side. I'll give you credit anyway. 8.3378 pounds. And if the water is colder, is it heavier or lighter? It's heavier. The colder the water is, the heavier it is. Well, finally, number 10. What percent of your body is water? The average, it's about 58.5% on average. Gentlemen, we have more water in us than the ladies do. We're about 60%. Ladies, you're about 55%. You're 5% less. My wife would probably tell us that that 5% is made up of more brains, but I don't know that to be the case. Babies, those little bitty, squishy, gushy, round, pudgy things, those things are 75 to 78% water. No wonder they have such a leakage problem when they're so little. Well, it's interesting, and as we transition to the sermon, can you think of any stories in the Bible that have to do with water? There ought to be a bunch right off. You could probably list about 15 without even thinking about it. Starting at the Garden of Eden, and of course the big flood event. Imagine water turning to blood like it did in Egypt. Or how about the dividing of the Red Sea? I'd love to see that. That would be awesome to see that. You go into the New Testament, we see Jesus being baptized by John the Baptist. One of my favorite stories is Peter walking on the water. I'd like to do that That would be kind of fun. And I love the story because it makes so much of an impact in my life. When these big, tough fishermen are in the boat, Jesus is asleep. That boat is rocking and rolling, and they know they're going to die. They finally turn to Jesus. Jesus. And I love it. Relax, easy going. This is what I want in my life. I want Jesus to say, peace, be still. The lightning went away, the thunder ceased, the moon came out, and they sailed gently on. I don't know about you, but I need that in my life today. We're going to go to the book of John, but I'm going to get in trouble here, but it's okay because none of you can fire me. So I have been talking about water so much that I just am really thirsty. And as much as I would like to be able to share this with you, I'm not going to do that. This water has been in an ice chest, and so it's nice and cold. But if it's been a while since you've had nice, cool, fresh, clean water, let me just, what, have you never seen anybody drink water? No. This is so refreshing. It's so tasty. It's so cleansing. It's so... Oh, I wish you had some. I wish you could have some as well. But you can't, and so that's just going to be too bad. We're going to go to one of our stories of water. And this story of water contains no water. Now that's confusing. I got a little bit of a question look on you. All the stories of water, Jesus, this is one of my favorites, one of the most popular. We find it in the book of John. So if you will turn to John chapter 4. Now John is a unique individual. He's one of my favorite chapters. It is one of the Gospels, but it's not one of the synoptic Gospels. We find some very unique things in John that we don't find in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. In fact, 92% of John is unique. Now, John writes from a viewpoint that I really, really like. It's a relationship base. In fact, you know how John describes himself? John, we have last names here. Pastor talked about my kids, and we're all LH, In fact, Laura's brother, when they sent us a Christmas card, they just put LH5, and that works. But back then, they only had one name. And so John, as he described himself, I think it's really cool. John, the disciple that Jesus loves. I think that would be cool. Put your name in there. My disciple that I love. That would be kind of cool. Well, we're going to talk about this brief encounter. And this encounter is the longest conversation that Jesus has with an individual, other than his disciples, is with this woman. And we don't even know her name. We call her the Samaritan woman. So you see, if it were somebody from here, we'd call her the broken bow woman. Or we'd call her the woman at the well. And so we would say the woman at the church. We don't even know her name. Was it Hannah? Was it Mary? I don't know. But we're going to take a look at this, and I know you know the story, but the cool thing about the Bible, even the stories that you have heard time and time again, Daniel and the lion's den, David and Goliath, the more you get into it, it's kind of like peeling that onion. You can find things that apply to your life. And so we're going to dissect this story in just a little bit. But one of the things that I want to do right now is through the power of animation. Now you all have a good imagination, and you can read it in your Bible, and you can imagine what happened. And I'm not a big fan of reenactment of the Bible, but here's a little segment that I want you to imagine. We've got a couple of actors that's acting as Jesus and the disciples and the woman at the well. It's only a few minutes, but I want you to take a look at this, and let's go back in our mind. It's pretty much word for word what is on in the Bible, and so it's very true to the Bible. But let's go back and listen carefully to what the woman says. Watch her face. Listen to what Jesus says, and watch this dialogue of this very ancient story that we find in John chapter 4. Turn up a little bit.
A Samaritan woman came to draw some water.
Give me a drink of water.
His disciples had gone into town to buy food.
You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan. So how can you ask me for a drink?
Jews will not use the same cups and bowls that Samaritans use.
If you only knew what God gives, and who it is that is asking you for a drink, you would ask him. He would give you a life-giving water.
Sir, you don't have a bucket and the well is deep. Where would you get that life-giving water? It was our ancestor Jacob who gave us this well. He and his children and his flocks all drank from it. You don't claim to be greater than Jacob, do you?
Those who drink this water will get thirsty again. But those who drink the water that I will give them will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give them will become in them a spring, which will provide them with life-giving water and give them eternal life.
Sir, give me that water. Then I will never be thirsty again. Nor will I have to come here to draw water.
Go and call your husband and come back.
I don't have a husband.
You are right when you say you don't have a husband. You've been married to 5 men, and the man you live with now is not really your husband. You have told me the truth.
You are a prophet, sir. My Samaritan ancestors worshipped God on this mountain. But you Jews say that Jerusalem is the place where we should worship God.
Believe me, woman. The time will come when people will not worship the Father either on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans do not really know whom you worship. But we Jews know whom we worship because it is from the Jews that salvation comes. But the time is coming, and is already here, when by the power of God's Spirit, people will worship the Father as he really is, offering him the true worship that he wants. God is Spirit, and only by the power of his Spirit can people worship him as he really is.
I know that the Messiah will come. And when he comes, he will tell us everything.
I am he. I who am talking with you.
At that moment, Jesus' disciples returned, and they were greatly surprised to find him talking with a woman. But none of them said to her, "What do you want?" or asked him, "Why are you talking with her?"
Interesting to see, isn't it? To imagine what it was there. It's interesting why this woman came. Well, first of all, let's back up. Jesus, in traveling between Galilee and Judea, Samaria is in the middle. Most of the Jews went across the Red Sea to go back and forth. Jesus, when he got up in the morning, he said, I must needs, in verse 4, he said, I must, in other words, I have an appointment in Samaria. See, God's travels were not haphazard. He knew that here was a woman that by worldly standards was a throwaway person. But it was a daughter of his. And he said, you know what? I'm going to meet this woman. And he made an appointment to meet her at lunch. Now we think that's not a big deal. But people understand. How heavy is water? It's roughly, it's 8+ pounds. And so it was the chore of the women to carry water. And you can imagine, if you lived a quarter of a mile from the well, and you had a big pot, let's say it even had 5 gallons, and the pot weighed 10 pounds, and you fill it with 5 gallons of water, how much roughly does it weigh? 50 pounds. And plus, and yeah, you're going to hold me to that, aren't you? All right. And you can imagine hauling it that far. Well, in those days, remember, the women would come in the evening for 2 reasons. One, it was a lot cooler. The sun had gone down, it was in the cool of the evening. And number 2, they had a good chance to chit-chat back and forth. I don't know about the women in this church, whether you like to chit-chat back and forth, but I know the women in Denver, and I know the women in my family. My girls and my wife get together, and they can talk forever. I talk a couple of minutes with my girls, and I'm done. Not her. She can go for 2 hours. But somehow, this woman chose to come during the heat of the day when nobody was around. You know why? Dr. Elizabeth Talbot suggests 4 things about this fact: shame, loneliness, outcast, and rejection. And ladies, again, please don't answer this out loud, but if there's a gal who has gone through 5 husbands, is now on husband number 6, how much are you going to trust her? Probably not much. We don't know many details about this individual, but if we think that this woman was probably not well liked, and probably didn't like people very well, to say the least. But you know, the more we get in, I think when we're done, you're going to have a respect for this woman and her skills that you might not have. This woman was a master, not just at getting men, but she was a master at avoiding Jesus. You're going to say, why do we want to learn about avoiding Jesus? Well, my friends, I'll talk to myself. You can listen in if you want. I sometimes avoid my Lord. I do. And sometimes, and we're going to fill out, if you take that blue sheet, turn it over, on the other side, there are 7 areas that we're going to talk about as we dissect this woman's approach to avoiding Jesus. And if you'll excuse me for just another minute, by the way, are any of you starting to get thirsty? A little bit, perhaps? Okay? I can see why you would. If I didn't have this water, I'd be terribly thirsty. But I'm doing really good, thank you. All right, let's get into this word here, okay? Take your pen and pencil out, flip that blue sheet over, and on line number 1, put the word ignore. Ignore. We saw it on the video, chapters 4, verse 7 and 8. When the Samaritan woman came to draw water, let's stop there for a moment. She would have gotten her water. She saw Jesus. She ignored him completely. She completely did not say good morning, did not say anything. She would have gotten her water, and she would have taken it, and she would have gone, and it would have been out of line. Her first step in avoiding Jesus was to ignore him. But Jesus came there for a reason, didn't he? And he wouldn't let her ignore him. Sometimes the best way to get somebody's attention is to ask them a question. As a teacher, I do that a lot. If I see a student nodding off or starting to talk to their neighbor or something, oftentimes I'll ask that kid a question. I'll talk to that individual. Ask, can't ignore me. You got to draw in. And so Jesus did something really simple. He said to her, will you give me a drink of water? Remember, he was by himself because he knew that his disciples there would have messed things up. She would have been afraid to talk to this group of men, and I understand that. So Jesus, using his brain, using his knowledge, he had said to his disciples, guys, I want you to go to Sicker, and I want you to go to Taco Bell and get me 2 burritos and a tostado. In other words, he sent them off to get lunch. He sent them out to get some lunch. And so here the woman comes, just like he knew. He had an appointment just as real as you and I have doctor's appointments or dentist appointments. Jesus said to her, will you give me something to drink? Now normally if somebody asks you for a drink, you have one of 2 choices. You can say yes, or you can say no. The woman didn't say anything. She immediately moved to line number 2, and that's prejudice. Prejudice. She did not say yes, she did not say no, but she said, you are a Jew, I am a Samaritan. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Please don't answer this question. Does prejudice come out in your life at all? And there's lots of ways to be prejudiced, folks. It's not just black and white or Hispanic and Asian. It's big and tall, short, fat, rich, poor. All of those things. In James, he gives us chapter 2, and because we're running out of time, I won't go there. But James chapter 2 addresses very, very succinctly not being prejudiced. 2 people come in, one without good clothes, one with good clothes. Naturally, you set the good one down here, you tell the other one there's a metal chair you can sit over there. A lot of ways that we can be prejudiced. But, so line number 1, we have ignore. Line number 2, we have prejudice. Okay? Line number 3, change the subject. Change the subject. After Jesus had gotten rid of her prejudice and said, basically, I'm going to talk to you. I'm not prejudiced. We're going to talk together. Well, the woman, this very, very good, evasive gal, knew the tricks of the trade, changed the subject. We find it in verse 11 and 12. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Because Jesus had, in answering her second question of prejudice, he had told her the real reason he came, and that was for living water. And so she changes the subject. She talks to him, asks him, where can you get this living water? And she talks about the history of the well. Jacob built this well, and are you greater than Jacob, our father Jacob? Change the topic. Jesus answered, gets back again to the real thing that he wants to talk about. He answers in the very next verse, 13. Jesus said, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become a spring of water welling up to eternal life. And if you read the next line, you think Jesus is making progress. Because line number 4 on your sheet, please, is superficial truth. Because the woman said to him, sir, give me this water. And if she would have stopped there, it would have been, okay, give me the living water. But she talks, okay, there's some water, but she says, sir, give me this water so I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming back to drink. Sometimes you and I read the scripture with bias. We have to be careful. That's why it's so important. When you open the Word of God, ask Him to guide you. Because it's so easy to misinterpret some of the things. In fact, the book Christian Education said, people today wrest the Scriptures to evade the truth therein. Their interpretation of the Scriptures, they teach, as did the Pharisees, the maxims and the traditions of humanity instead of the commandments of God. So this woman, she started out ignoring Jesus. She showed prejudice to Him. She quickly tried to change the subject. And number 4, she kept it very surface. She was not about going to let Him get into the her real being, into her heart. And she's ready now for number 5. Number 5 is a half-truth. Is there such thing as a half-truth? Probably not. You might call it a lie, even. But it's a half-truth. And you could see as you watched on the video here, Jesus hesitated just a little bit because He's tried to reach her 4 times. This woman has avoided Him 4 times. And now Jesus finally says, okay, it's time to bring out the scalpel. I've got to cut through the tough exterior, and I've got to get to this woman's heart. And He looks down, and finally he says the words that He knows would get her attention. And He says to her in verse 16, go, call your husband and come back. Did you see her face on the screen? She was okay, but all of a sudden, when He took out that scalpel, all of a sudden her face turned. He's getting too close. Getting way too close. I don't want him there. And she shut him up, or tried to shut him up very quickly. In verse 17, I have no husband. End of discussion. But Jesus, He doesn't give up. He doesn't give up on you. I don't care if you're 110 years old. Jesus stands ready. He's not going to force Himself, but He's going to open His arms. He's going to say, come. No matter how many times you said no, He says, come. And Jesus was not going to let her get away. And this is where He really, really cut through muscle and bone and nerves to get to that heart. He said, you're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you are with now is not your husband. What you have said is true. A normal person would have finally said, enough is enough. Okay. But not this gal. Masterful. She pauses on the video for just a moment. Thinks for just a moment. Should I accept? No, I'm not ready to. I can't, not yet. And so she tries number 6, religiosity. And you're going to have to hear me carefully because I don't want to be misunderstood on religiosity. Verse 19 and 20. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim the place where we need to worship is Jerusalem. What in the world does that have to do with anything with living water? It's like saying, you from Denver think you need to wear a tie. We in Broken Bow don't have to wear a tie. Who's right? That's religiosity. That's religiosity. And here's where I'm going to, Pastor, I'm going to step on some toes just a little bit. Okay? My friends, here's where we get ourselves in trouble sometimes. Listen to me carefully. There is a difference between principles and preferences. Preferences are things that I like. Preferences change over time. Preferences are not necessarily right or wrong. Principles never change. If you come to the Rocky Mountain Conference, you'll see the presidents from the 1800s. Did you know every single president during the 1800s and clear up to, I think, probably about 1950s, every single president, not one, every single president has a beard. Just did. That was a preference. Did you know when I was, a long time ago, when I was a cop, I had a mustache? Because all cops had a mustache. Did you know I can change my mustache? I haven't done that. That's been 30 years. I probably never will. Because it's a preference. Is it a principle? No, it's not a principle. The color of your carpet is a preference, not a principle. So why have I seen churches that have been divided over the color of the carpet? It's because they've gotten principles and preferences mixed up. Be careful. Hang on to principles. Jesus forgiving, is that a principle or a preference? That's a principle that will never change. The seventh-day Sabbath, is that a principle or a preference? It is a thus saith the Lord. People, the right thing to do, and people will admire you for standing for principle. As I watch those people on that stage in Boulder, Colorado, you know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for a man or a woman of principle. Somebody who doesn't say, oh, the wind's blowing this way, so this is the way I'll go. Somebody who will stand for the right. Ellen White talks it. The greatest one of the world is the one of men or women. Men or women who will not be bought or sold, who is true to duty as the needle is to the pole. That's what you and I need to be. Let's be people of principle and let preference be what it really is, and that is of no concern. So enough preaching. Yeah, I can preach a little bit. Just a little bit. All right. So this gal, oh mercy, she has tried so much to avoid Jesus. She started with ignoring him. She's moved to the prejudice part. She's changed the subject. She's gone into superficial truth to get him off kilter. She's told a half-lie. She's got him, tried to get him on some tangent over preferences and not principles, and this religiosity. And finally, she comes to the last one, because as Jesus says in verse 24, it's not the physical things that count, not the place, but the heart that counts, in spirit and in truth. This woman, you see it for the first time. She's so close. But she has one last card to play. One last card to play. And she says wistfully, with a smile on her face, I know that the Messiah, called the Christ, is coming. And when he comes, he will tell us all things. Her last card. She's done. And Jesus in verse 26, I am. This woman's heart was now exposed, completely exposed. Jesus had to whittle, had to work, had to do everything to get down. And what was this woman's reaction? This very valuable item that she had, her purpose in coming to this well to get water. She forgot the water. She forgot her mission. She even forgot the pot. And she immediately went back to the very people that she had been trying to avoid. She said, come. Come. There's some living water. Perhaps this is the Messiah that we have been looking for so long. Perhaps.